Hello everyone, welcome back. We're here on the farm this morning, myself and my son, and we're excited to get to work today. We've got another full day planned of work here on the property, and the thing that really excites us about this labor, about showing up day after day, week after week, oftentimes recently at least in inclement rainy weather, is the fact that we're not just planting fruit trees. We're not just planting interesting, fruits that we can put on the breakfast table and enjoy. We are actually viewing this through the lens of personal freedom. We are planting freedom. Every time I plant an avocado tree, I'm covering more of the year with avocados to feed my family. I view everything through the lens of freedom. Every time we make a payment and get something done on the property, whether it be bulldozing or fencing or whatever it is, I'm one step closer to having freedom for my family. And so that's the lens that I view things through. And unfortunately, in our society today, worldwide, not just in the United States, there's a move away from liberty. There's a move away from individual rights and freedoms, and in the name of safety, right? And so while it is very, very difficult to change the world, it's not so difficult to change your own personal world and the world of your family. And so that's what we're doing here. We're working debt-free, one thing at a time as God opens the way, and we're planting, we're building, we're developing. And as some of you know, we've done this all before. And we lived quite happily for some time at another location here on the island. Unfortunately, we lost that place. We lost the farm, we lost the home, we lost really our entire way of life. And that was very, very difficult. But rather than just sit down and fold our hands, we've gotten back to work again. Now, that's been extremely difficult, as some of you might imagine, especially due to the fact that we were unable to get insurance, meaning we ended up losing everything we had, leaving it all, and then getting essentially nothing in return. And so we've started over, and by God's grace we've made tremendous progress in 2.5 years. So we are grateful to God for all the progress and for His provision of helping us to purchase this place, to develop it as much as we have in a short period of time. We bought this place June of 2020, which was essentially just an agricultural field, and we've been working on it, as much as possible since that time. And so we're going to keep at it until, by God's grace, we're able to live here. We've got everything built and developed, and we're just excited for the future, and we're thankful for what we have. But our goal through this channel really is very, very simple, and that goal is to inspire and encourage others to do something similar with their own families. And that's what this is all about. The reality is that I'm an introvert, right? The last thing I want to be doing is public speaking or sharing my experience, but I do it simply because there is a hope that maybe I can also help a few others along the way. My wife and I, we were helped tremendously by some folks who did just that. And so that is why we have decided to do the same. And sometimes we've thought to ourselves, as we developed and built our homestead, and we got debt-free on our last homestead, and we were living good, sometimes we've wondered, why did God allow the destruction of our place? Why did God permit everything to be destroyed and taken from us? Especially when it seems like now it's so much more difficult to do the same thing over again. The prices have gone up incredibly. It's so much harder to get materials and trees, and it's just like, this is like the worst time to have lost a place. Is in these recent years, because it's just the conditions are not very easy to do it all over again. We still don't really have answers as to that question, and we may never in this life. However, we have come to the conclusion that perhaps God wanted us to, step by step, from the beginning of our journey to the end, sort of broadcast or share our experience, because perhaps it would help others. And so, in other words, maybe we lost everything and maybe we're doing it all over again to show people that it's still possible. And that gives us a little bit of comfort. I believe, as a Seventh-day Adventist, I believe that it's God's purpose for His people to leave the cities, to return to the country for multiple reasons. One of them being that we believe that the time is coming when those who would hold liberty of conscience dear are going to have a very, very hard time. In other words, there's a time of persecution coming, and there's a preparation that we need to make for that, a preparation that is physical, mental, and spiritual. But what I've discovered is there's another entirely different purpose in us leaving the cities and going out into the country and finding a more back to the land, self-reliant, God-reliant sort of lifestyle. And that is that the experience changes us. In other words, there's lots of obstacles that we meet, and there are lots of things to work through, and these things sort of chisel and shape and mold us. And this is a process that God wants for us. And so one of the more recent conclusions I've come to is that perhaps I didn't learn enough, I didn't get enough chiseling in the first 7 or 8 years of me doing this at my last place, and now I get to go through the experience again. Who knows? We do know that the children of Israel, when they were marching from Egypt down to the Promised Land, they had to make a few laps around the mountain, and that they would not have had to make if they had learned the lessons the first time. And so who knows exactly why God allowed this experience, but we're going to take this opportunity to, rather than just sit around and cry perpetually about it, we're going to do something. We're going to get up, and by God's grace, we're going to do it again, and we're going to use this opportunity to learn some things, get some more chiseling, shape our characters in a positive way, and also at the same time we're hoping to share some things with a few of you, and hopefully inspire and encourage and help you in your journey as well. And so that's what we're up to. We're here today. This is about, 9 months into our journey on this property. We've had a lot of setbacks and challenges. We're about 4 months into planting on the property, and we're just excited about the changes that are taking place, the improvements, the growth that we're seeing. It's really exciting. Now, as far as the plants and trees and things like that, we're planting every week, and we probably will be for quite some time. But so far we've planted about 75 fruit trees, everything from unusual species like long Kong and different kinds of mangosteen and things like that, to more common trees like we're growing lots and lots of avocados. One of our initiatives right now is to produce year-round avocados. In other words, there's going to be zero gap throughout the entire year where we're not going to be harvesting avocados. And so I've lined them up with specific breeds where we're going to hopefully have 2 or 3 different kinds of avocados bearing every month of every year. So that's something I'm working on. So that's 75 of those trees. Then I've got additional trees, which are bananas. So I've got about 30 clumps of bananas, 12 different kinds at present planted. I've got 20 something papayas, which I'm hoping to expand that number here in the near future. And then what else we have? We have 50 something pineapple plants, and then we've got lots of different kinds of vegetable crops, like we've got moringa trees for growing the leaves for greens, and then we've got all kinds of other greens and tomatoes and things like that. So it's a It's quite a big project. It's going to take years, but the reality is that with what we've got right now, I have absolutely total confidence that we are going to already have an abundance of food for our family for the future, with just a little bit more time. So anyway, if this kind of thing interests you, if you could use a little inspiration in your own homesteading journey, if you'd like to, then perhaps you could consider subscribing and click the notification bell, simply because that will not only make sure that you get the content in the future, but also it helps YouTube recommend our content to more individuals that hopefully can be helped as well. So we're going to get started with our work here on the property today, and so join us and come along for the ride. So one of the many projects we're going to be working on today is cleaning up around this particular banana patch. This is one of 3 of our initial banana patches on the property, and we've got this cane grass growing into our mulch berms around here. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. We're going to work on remounding our mulch and maybe adding a little bit more. But these bananas have made quite a bit of progress, and we've learned something interesting. We had some volunteer basil. You can see it right over here. We had some volunteer basil growing up in our bananas, and we thought, oh, no problem, we'll just let it grow. But what we've noticed is that those plants that had the basil growing around them, the basil looks beautiful and healthy, but the bananas are actually quite a bit shorter and dwarfed compared to the others. And so we're going to go ahead and remove the basil, let it have its place separately elsewhere, and but we're very happy overall with the progress of these bananas. I recently came across a really interesting resource for banana growers, and it was communicating how you can tell different deficiencies in bananas. And in this particular one, this is evidence of a deficiency. You see how these little portions of the stalk are just kind of peeling back and extending away from the trunk. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off, and then we will pull back the mulch, and we're going to add some trace minerals, some azomite, around the bananas, and that will give them the nutrition that they need and help them to be a lot healthier. So it looks like we're finished here in this patch. Let's head on over and we'll take a look at some of the progress on the little trees here in this orchard. So this is one of our many soursops. We really enjoy this fruit. It's setting some new leaves and new branches. It looks pretty good, just planted maybe a month ago. So this was our very first tree we planted. This, you may have seen the video of us planting, showing our planting method. And this is our breadfruit, Ma'afala. And it's going through its first set of leaves and got some new, brand new growth coming out here. It's making good progress. One of our grafted Acha Chairu. New branch coming out. Looks beautiful. I think these cages have helped a lot. We've got purple Haitian star apple. Long Kong from Thailand. Very similar to Lanzones. This is a Hawaiian variety of jackfruit called Finan. Charwool avocado, planted about a week ago. This is the first avocado that we've planted out on the property. It's a Kahalu'u Hawaiian variety, and you can see that we've had quite a bit of growth in just a few months' time. So you can get an idea from looking here how we plant our avocados. Because of the incredible amount of rainfall, we actually plant them 100% in black volcanic cinder. So there's actually no soil in here. We also mound it, and then what I'm going to do is put a little bit of the native soil, which I'm going to kind of spread around, just a thin layer. We're going to cover it with thick mulch, and that way these things have a lot of drainage for the 154 inches of rain we get each year. So that's how we plant our avocados. This here is a mame sapote. It actually didn't do too well when we planted it. It got all bitten up and it was looking pretty bad. We went ahead and put this cage with shade cloth after the fact, and now it's recovering nicely. And so we're relieved that it's gonna do well. This is another Kahaluu avocado. We've got its first flowers coming out now. You can see the contrast here between a island garden, as we call it here, this round circular garden bed, and the one that we planted just a few months earlier. So I think we've experienced quite a bit of growth in just the last 12 weeks or so. Our banana is quite large. These were essentially just sticks that were planted in the ground. Initially we put them in pots, though you don't need to. And this is Tongan spinach, which is to us like a tropical equivalent of kale that we cook, one of our favorite greens. We've got our banana, our nasturtiums, our taro root, our pumpkins. This is kabocha squash, we call it, and our sweet potato ground cover, as well as our papayas all spread throughout the garden. The taro are getting nice and big, probably another 5 months or so, and these will be ready for harvest. This is a smaller orchard for the trees that are more compact in their shape. And so we've got all of our citrus here, limes, lemons, Mineola tangelos, and tangerines, as well as some other compact trees like Rollinia. And we've actually got an apple tree from Israel, which does not require the chill. And so that would be the Anna apple, Ras sapote, Brazilian cherry, and we've got macadamia nut and chocolate sapote. This is the Anna apple tree. You may remember in a previous video we wrapped this in cellophane or plastic wrap, and that actually was a stopgap method during a rainstorm where we were trying to protect it from rose beetles, and it worked perfectly. We came back at a later time and we put this proper cage here with 50% shade cloth, and the tree is really looking beautiful. It's actually made quite a bit of growth in just a couple weeks time since we planted it. This is Brazilian cherry or grama-chama, and this is something I first had at the age of 17 when I moved to Australia. It's really a very nice fruit. We enjoy it quite a bit, and it's growing very, very fast. I'm sure we'll probably have fruit on this probably by the end of this year. Here are some of our bananas here on the hillside. We're going to be taking some of these and making new clumps for different portions of the property. So these happen to be Goldfinger. You'll see about 3 or 4 in this particular clump. There's 4 here, so we'd like to keep that to a maximum of 3. So we're going to break off some of the little keikis and we're going to take them to transplant elsewhere. If you want the biggest racks of bananas, you would keep this even to just one mother plant and take away any keikis. So we've got more keikis, mother plant, the babies, and so we'll take some of these with us when we transplant. When we're choosing the plants which we're going to transplant, we're going to choose those with more of a pointed, sharper edged leaves compared to those who have more of a mature banana leaf. And these ones are called sword suckers, and they tend to be more resilient and have more life and energy and produce better racks of fruit. This is one of our Mineola tangelos. It's one of our favorite fruits to eat. And we planted them here and they really got bit up bad by the rose beetles. So we initially liked the apple, we wrapped it in cellophane with a tomato cage, and now we've gone ahead and put a better, longer term house for it. It'll probably spend about a year here in this cage with the 50% shade cloth, but it's protected and it's gonna have some beautiful new growth you can see coming out here now. We've decided to extend our row of bananas here right through this area. We had previously planted some pineapples that are doing pretty well. But we're gonna go ahead and transplant these to another area right over here. When we plant our pineapples here in the native soil, we like to plant them with a little bit of extra drainage. So we've got some black volcanic cinder here. We're gonna work it into the soil, and then we'll transplant the pineapples right into this area.
Let's see how much roots it has. Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, that looks really good. All right, so we found a good sword sucker here that we're going to use for transplanting. And we're going to use a tool here with a flat edge, and we're going to wedge this between the mother plant and the keiki. And we're going to kind of sever the connection. So while there's not much on top, there's quite a bit of roots. And this thing that's just tiny and sort of looks rather uninteresting is gonna grow quite well. So we're gonna transplant this whole piece. And right here, you can see that we've sort of severed the edge of this corm. And what we're gonna do to prevent any disease is we're gonna make sure we cover it well so that any boring insects don't get in there. So we've got cinder and native soil, and we've got chicken manure pellets. Most trees we don't use chicken manure or any manure in the hole, but with bananas we definitely do. And so we're going to plant this, then we're going to plant these roots out extending. And we space these trees about 10 feet. It's really rewarding to see how these plants are all developing around the property. This particular banana plant here we purchased just some months ago when it was about this size here. And now it's got little babies or keikis of its own. And so we're encouraged to see how everything's growing around the property. We're hopeful for the future, and we would encourage others to do something similar. Maybe not in Hawaii, but in your neck of the woods, wherever it is that God has for you. So until next time, we'll see you later, and God bless. Aloha.